business cars, office cars, whatever you want to call them, are absolutely fascinating pieces of equipment. And especially the one behind me, 908 from the Baltimore, Ohio Railroad. This one has a really neat history and is named for one of the premier B&O presidents and somebody that really was a leader in the railroad industry. Hi, this is Trevor from History on the Move, and I'm here at the B&O Railroad Museum, and behind me is B&O number 908, better known as the John T. Collinson. We're going to get into who is John T. Collinson, and we're going to get all over this car. I'll take you inside, outside, and really explain everything that I've been able to absorb about this car. So sit back, grab your favorite cup of coffee, tea, whatever it is that you're drinking these days, and really enjoy this episode as much as I'm going to have fun making it for you.
Hard to tell that the world is turning. It's hard to chill when it's so concerning. Through the air where the smoke is churning, I am an open.
So how did these cars come into existence? Well, as far back as the 1840s and 1850s, research has shown through John H. White, one of the former curators of the Smithsonian down in D.C., he has shown that railroad barons were looking for ways and means of entertaining people, as well as going over the trackage that was just laid and kind of surveying what was already put in place. So these cars kind of had very primitive roots in the 1840s, 1850s. Now, by the time the 60s and 70s comes along, these cars are really kind of starting to fall out of favor. And the one behind me here has kind of been supplanted by a more modern version of it, also called the John T. Collinson, which is kind of cool in of itself because it is more of a theater car. And what do I mean by that? Well, a theater car, you would have a giant glass window in the back, and that way it was like stadium seating, so that way you could see out over everything. And a couple months ago, we actually had CSX bring the John T. Collinson and another car with it, and you're able to go through it for a limited time and see how railroad officials in the modern day observe everything. Now, there's no ways and means of them to stay overnight and do their thing. They don't really do that anymore. The advent of the automobile, hotels, motels, things like that, kind of put these dinosaurs into museums at that point. So, but why don't we get into the history of 908? But let's go inside and do that because it's kind of cold out here and the heat's on inside. Well, let's talk a little history here since we're inside and warming up because it is a balmy 40-something degrees outside. Welcome to Baltimore. So, 1917, the Chicago and Alton Railroad builds this particular car that we're sitting in right now as number 503, and it's an all-wood car. All wood meaning that the sheathing on the sides is all wood, and the frame, center sill and the outer sills are all wood. And they would have used something dense like red oak or something of that nature to build that frame, right? Because you got to be able to deal with the draft forces, slack moving in and out and all that. So it's 503, and it's built in Bloomington, Indiana, again at the Chicago and Alton Railroad shops there. Now 503 would eventually go back to Bloomington, Indiana, back into the shops, and it would emerge in 1926 with the steel frame that it has today and the riveted steel body. And this is very typical because the 20s is where we start to get metallurgical breakthroughs in steel making, and this is the teens into the 20s is the death, if you will, of the wood car and the emergence of all steel. Not to mention that dealing with the elements outside, steel does a little bit better, less prone to rot. So 1931, excuse me, the Chicago and Alton becomes a subsidiary of the B&O, and now the B&O is in possession of this car. They renumber it to 922, And 922 would eventually become property of the B&O. The B&O would own it outright in 1944 because the B&O acquires the rights to the car. And 1945 is the big breakthrough in that it goes to the Mount Clair shops, essentially where we're sitting right now. We're on the Mount Clair property. And it would receive an air conditioning unit. So this is state of the art, because prior to this, it would have had steam heat, and that's it. And if you want air conditioning, well, you better either go out on the observation platform or open a window. And so this is where the air conditioning comes in. That's built by York Manufacturing. And so it also receives the roller bearings. So this was built originally, 1917, with plain bearings, which is typical of the time frame. But by 1945, roller bearings were becoming way easier to deal with. They were easier to maintain. Railroads love that stuff. And this is also, as it emerges in 1945 from the Mount Clair shops, 922 is now numbered 908. And eventually this served multiple people, people that were going, over the road and doing inspection tours. And one of them was John T. Collinson, and he served a prolific career with them. He also worked his way up the ladder into the chassis system, and he eventually retired vice president of, I'm blanking, but I'll drop it down below, for CSX. And that is prolific. He was a very progressive guy in terms of railroading. He was a big coal man. He understood the coal fields, and he grew up in Connellsville, Pennsylvania. And he definitely is very endearing to me because he was a Navy veteran, served during World War II. And so I think that's fascinating. So this car was his for a while. And 1967, this car was eventually retired. And that is pretty prolific in the fact that these cars eventually kind of gave way. They were just not popular anymore. As we said, the rise of the automobile and the hotels and motels and, corporate jets and yada, yada, yada. These cars, became just money pits. And eventually they were retired for service, and they end up in museums. So on that note, as 1967 expires, and it was bought up by two private owners over the years, and they did whatever it is that they did to the car. And so there are some things that we'll see along our tour here that are not, we'll call them period correct. But it was donated here in 1990. And so 2 years it took for them to go through, and they did the restoration, cleaned everything up, did some paint. Looks beautiful. Looks like it, like you see it today. And so in 1992, 908 is now on display, and they did a really nice ceremony where they painted on the side and they named this car the John T. Collinson in honor of Mr. Collinson. So now that we've warmed up a bit, why don't we get up and let's take a little tour. Let's go to the outside. All right, so we'll go outside, we'll take a look at what's on the ground on this thing, and then we'll come back inside so we can warm up again.
Place in the yard where the flowers blooming, high in the castle in the corner room. Well, sing with me now, we will be alright. Sing with me now, we will be alright. I plan on living up on this life. I plan on giving up on strife. Well, it ain't nobody mine.
All right, so I'm on the ground here with 908. Let's talk about what we see. So you have your train line here. You have your signal line here. What you don't see is your steam heat line. That would have came out here, dropped down, and would have been in here. And where is that, you may ask? Well, it was probably taken out when the car went into private service after 1967. And at some point, they just used the furnace, the HVAC unit that we'll see inside, is the main source of heat on this thing. So let's keep moving here. So you have two lights to look along the tracks here. So if you're the chief engineer, if you're John T. Collinson, you want to see, well, you want to see what you see. You want to see the right of way as you go by. So you have a light here, and you have a light over here, and you also have a light here if you're standing on the observation deck. Here's your dump valve, so that you are looking and you don't see something you like and you need to put the train into emergency. This is what you use. Pull that, dumps the air. And on the observation deck platform, you got your two lights here, and your controls for those are there. You also have a Mars light. Yep, this car has a Mars light right here, and if we walk to the side here, you also have obviously marker lights, because you got to be able to mark these as the end of the train. And something else I want to point out, there's a really good photo in a book, and I'll flash this up on the screen, that shows this style heavyweight car that's behind, I believe it's on the Cincinnatian, and this car is actually behind the observation car on that car. So whoever that was on that particular day that was moving their, was taking their car to wherever it was, you know, whoever the railroad official was, they had coupled their car onto the back of the Cincinnatian to you know, go wherever it is that they were going. So kind of neat. I think that the book is by Ryan Bossler, and I'll flash it up on the screen so you can see that as well. So let's keep moving. All right, so we talked, this is a heavyweight car. So 1, 2, 3 axles on each truck. And as we talked about, this has roller bearings on it. So you have Hyatt roller bearings on every axle. You also have a coil and a leaf spring, 2 sets on here, because if you're on a business car, you want the most comfiest of rides. You don't want to feel all that stuff. And this is pretty typical of a heavyweight car. So let's keep moving here. All right, what else do we see? We're getting into some brake equipment here. But let's point out, actually, this is kind of neat. So this over here is a axle-powered generator. Well, it's gone, but there would have been a U-joint here. And it would have powered something else, but it has long since disappeared. But this is kind of neat because it uses, let me see if I get my light on here. There we go. It uses this belt, this leather belt, to power it. And that goes over the axle on that pulley there. And then it comes back to this pulley here. And I would surmise this was for some form of a generator, if not an AC compressor of sorts. Don't know, because guess what? It's not there. There is your air reservoir for the brake system. That is one of them. Let's keep moving here. Excuse me. This is for ground power. So if you're at a station or a terminal of some sorts, this is where you're going to plug in to charge your batteries. And here is your brake valve. And off the top of my head, I don't know if this is a D22 or a UC brake valve, but it's one of those. And this is definitely not original to the car. Don't know what it is, not really sure, but this would have not been in service on the car while the B&O owned it. So this is definitely a post-1967 apparatus of sorts. So here are your battery boxes, and here's your vents for said battery. So your bank of batteries would have sat inside of here. Here's your brake cylinder. And let's go and look, here's another reservoir. The air. Now this is kind of cool. Let's see how close I can get you to looking at this. Excuse me. All right. I think we're okay. So this gives us a better idea of what that other thing would have looked like, the other setup on the other side of that axle-powered generator. So you have a leather belt that would have gone here, wrapped around this axle. So this spins going like this. And then there's almost like a differential inside of here that converts this motion to this motion. That then spins this drive shaft through the universal joints here. And then we get to here, and as this is spinning, it's then turning these belts, spinning the belt, and those belts on the other side are spinning that pulley over here. And that pulley then drives this DC generator right here. Now this thing's got a bit of a funky electrical system on it, so it's got, you know, multiple, this thing's been gone through multiple times over the years, but that is what that is. That is a DC generator. So let's get out of here and keep on moving. Something else I do want to point out is this car sits at the museum and is used for meetings and other stuff like that. So it does not use the DC power that's on there. It uses modern, you know, or not modern, but 120 AC. So, and it has the We use this guy here as a way of heating and cooling because they still conduct meetings and other things like that. And they give tours, and you don't want people to freeze to death nor be sultry during the summertime. So let's keep moving here. So this is part of the ground electrical setup here. And this gives us a good chance to look at the car body itself. So remember we talked about how it went from 1926, it was converted from the wood to what you see here, which is this riveted steel body right here. And again, this was very typical for 1920s. A lot of cars that they knew were going to be in service for any length of time that were wood, were built as wood, would have been converted. And it just made good railroad sense. So that is, oh, on top, I don't think you can see it. Actually, I'll flash some B-roll up, but there is a train phone antenna on top of this guy, and that runs the length, and then it drops down into the car through the roof itself. And that's really neat. And that would have been for the mail secretary to be able to send out communications while they were en route. So that's pretty neat. And we'll see that phone and whatnot set up inside. So speaking of that, why don't we go inside so we're not freezing out here?
It's hard to tell that the world is turning. It's hard to cook when your kitchen's burning. Through the air where the smoke is churning, I'm an open mind that yearns for a place in the yard where the flowers blooming. High in the castle in the corner room. Sing with me now, we will be alright. Sing with me now, we will be alright. I plan on living.
All right, let's get warm. Whew. Because it is cold out there. So let's talk about, well, let's talk about this. We're in the observation area right here. So what you see is the very rear of the car. And this would have been the B end, right? We always talk about A and B end. Well, there's your handbrake right there. It's a ratcheting style. So you go like this. And it's got a little pawl down the bottom to release. So this is the B end. So we just came in through the B end here, as well as the observation platform end. And you could see just how beautiful this is. Very typical of cars, office cars and business cars built at that time period. You know, the from its inception is essentially, as we mentioned, John H. White in the 1840s and 50s was able to surmise that yes, there were these cars built, but also that, you know, all the way up until the very, well, really into the stainless steel era. So let me talk about that for a second. So when we get into the stainless steel era of cars, this behind me, this paneling of, I would surmise that that is some form of a hardwood, oak, maybe bird's eye maple, teak, not 100% sure, but that would have gone away. And they, in the stainless steel car era, things were very showy, and you had very pastel-y colors and Art Deco-y type of fixtures and things. And so, you know, this type of interior would have disappeared roughly the end of the 40s and the early 50s. But, you know, this car kind of kept that that setting, which I find fascinating. So let's keep moving here. So if you are the person, in this case, let's say it's John T. Collinson, right, chief engineer of the right-of-way, the B&O, during that time frame, you need to be able to see, and this is a great area to see, you need to be able to see, but also you need to be able to take notes as to what you are seeing as you go by. And you would have your little desk here, and you would sit here, make notes, drink your coffee, and just watch the countryside go by and make notes. Maybe it's about coal fields. Mr. Collinson was a big coal guy. Now, obviously, you know, great lighting, but we can't see that because this curtain is pulled down to protect said documents. But yes, that is what this area would have been. And what's really neat here is you have multiple things on the wall. You know, see if your air brake gauge here, the clock, which is missing, but it is written on there. And that clock is actually with the Collinson grandkids, I believe. It's either the kids or the grandkids have it. So they took that for them. And you also have to have a speedometer. And over here, your barometer. Yeah, this thing had a barometer. Now, how accurate that is, anybody's guess, right? Stormy, rain, change, fair, very dry. Don't know, but I think that's still pretty neat nonetheless. So let's keep moving here. And we'll talk about the seating here. Now this would have done one of these numbers and pulled out. And if you look up into the trim up here, see these hooks. You have one, you have two, you have three. And you would have been able to string a curtain across here if you were sleeping here for privacy. Now, obviously, Mr. Collinson's not going to be sleeping here, and nor are, but if you had a guest that was more than what he could account for in the bedrooms, and we'll get into that in a minute. Now, this leads me into another thing, which is let's talk about the original configuration for this car. So the original configuration, actually, I drew a diagram, so hopefully this helps, was like this. So you would have walked in, this is the observation platform, and you would have walked in, you would have had your seating area, you would have had a bulkhead, and then you would have had your dining area. So the dining area was right here, and then you would have had 4 staterooms, if you will, and then the kitchen area. So as we see it today, this is still here, you still have this, but the dining room was shifted to just here. So, and then essentially these were swapped is what happened when it went into the Mount Clair in 1945. The dining room was then moved to where 1 and 2 are, and this whole string got moved down, and then it just became 3 staterooms instead of 4. And so it just made sense, because why would you want to walk your food all the way down to here when if you just move the dining room to here, guess what? You can walk right out of your kitchen, you're right there. So this, as I've drawn it, this is the original configuration of the car, and what you see today obviously is what it looks like post 1945. So again, this would have been for that 4th person. You can have some privacy by pulling that curtain across, and obviously you have lots of seats here. You could put as many seats in here as you could fit. And as we talked about, this car originally had steam heat, and here's your radiator for that. Let me get some lighting on this. There we go. I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, your steam heat would have gone all along here, and that has long since disappeared. But originally this car was steam heat. So let's keep walking. This is also where, if you would have brought somebody here to, say, entertain them or have a business discussion, this is the area in which you would have done that in. What is also neat is the museum put these coverings in place. And so we can see, let me turn the light on again because it's a little dark in here. You can see the actual, would have been this. So that is the actual, this green. And you can see here how the hinge works. And then this again does one of these numbers, slides out. And then you have yourself a bed. All right, so let's continue down the hallway here. First thing we come to is the toilet. Now we can't get inside because there's plexiglass, but you can see there's a sink here, and then there's a shower back there, and then there is obviously a toilet here, and a little thing here where you can put your extra toilet paper and all other kinds of good stuff. So this is just a bathroom for anybody, really. Anybody who's on the car. Let's keep moving down the hallway here. So you have your passageway, right? This runs like this, runs the length of the car. And we come to room, excuse me, room C. Now, this is one of the 3. And obviously you have your light switches as you first walk in. You also have the control still here for the steam heat. Let me get some lighting on that. So you have off, low, medium, and high, and your call button for the porter right there. And remember how we talked about that train phone that's on the roof? Well, here is where you could come in and make said calls. So this would have been the mail secretary's room right here. You have a typewriter, so if you need to be able to type up notes, so say Mr. Collinson or whomever is dictating to you, and you need to be able to take furious notes as he's talking. Well, you have this. You also have a pencil sharpener that was added. So you can handwrite stuff. You have a light that comes out, and this is this is a little pull-down desk, and you had your cubby holes here, plenty of storage in here. And little seats here. Now here's the cool part. So you have, it's built much like a Pullman car, right? You have all this. But this is your bed, and if I were to pull this down, it is locked in place. But if I were to pull this down and then get out of the way, you can see that this bed would fold down. And so that would fold up and out of the way. And this is how the secretary would be able to have his nighttime arrangements so he can go to sleep. Because, got to go to bed at some point. All right, so let's leave room C. Come out, go down the hall, go to room B. So here we are in room B. Now this is set up much like just a normal bedroom. And you have a clock over there. So this is kind of cool. You have a clock here. I can't really see that because the light's not working. We'll see that in the next room actually. But yeah, you have a clock here with a light above it. And you have something so you can read at nights. You have your night light essentially. And you can hear that forced air furnace, and we'll see that when we get to it. But here's your ducting for that right here. So this allows the both heat and air conditioning to blow and heat up this room. Now this room is adjoined with the A room with a bathroom right here. But here's where you do your morning ablutions. Right? You put your soap here, your shaving stuff here. This car is state-of-the-art. You do have hot and cold water. There's a water heater. Obviously, if you have steam heat, you can have hot water. And so you have, again, set up much like a Pullman car. Not much difference there. But you really this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing stuff here. And, put your other things in here. Got a little top and put water. Perhaps boil some coffee, well, make some coffee, or store your coffee, I should say, in there. And then if we were to close the door, you have, oh, it's locked. But this, you could store your coat or your hat or whatever, extra clothes, whatever it is that you brought with you, you can store it here. So let's keep moving here. Open that back up. Actually, let's talk about the bathroom here for a minute. So you can see, now again, there's plexiglass here, but you can see you have a toilet, you have a sink, and it's a typical Pullman setup right there. Get my finger right there. And you have light both here and then above, over top of the door. And your shower would have been behind there. Behind door number 1 is a shower. And obviously you have your light switches there. So that is pretty neat. Let's keep going. We'll leave room B. Let's go down the hall. Take you to room A. So not much difference. Set up pretty much the same way. Again, light to be able to, your night light essentially. And here's that clock, but illuminated. And there's the ducting, so again, you can feel that. Well, I can feel that. You have to pretend. The heat is coming out. And now actually this room is, I'd say a little bit roomier than B, but this is most likely where Mr. Collinson or whomever is, this car is being used by. This would have been their main room to stay in. So let's keep moving down the hall, and as we talked about, it went from 4 staterooms to 3, and then the dining room got moved back to here. So here is said dining room, and you can hear the furnace roaring. We'll get to that in a minute. But here is your dining room here, and again, nice, beautiful paneling everywhere you look. Beautiful hardwood paneling, lights, and your cabinets for storing. Most likely, probably liquor, or, well, maybe not liquor, because Rule G, but, your plates and silverware and all that good stuff would have been here. You also have storage underneath. And again, the museum does use this to entertain people, so there is stuff set out. And again, the chairs are Most likely, these definitely look like they are from the 40s or 50s. But yeah, this is your main way of entertaining whoever it is that you've brought with you, or perhaps you're just eating by yourself. So let's keep moving. And we talked about that noisy furnace. Well, here it is. And I think I told you it is. Oh, I'm going to turn my light on. This is the York Ice Machinery Corporation. So this is the furnace that was installed in 1945 at Mount Clair. And again, it has since been retroed. So you have an AC motor that spins and then turns the blower inside. So this has been retroed, but there's the ducting going up, and then that feeds obviously along the outside, both this way and that way, but it feeds along the outside through the more ducting there. So this is your HVAC locker, essentially. So we'll keep moving here. We'll go through this door. So this, what we've just transitioned from, is we'll call it the living quarters. This is the line of disembarkation. It's probably the best way to put it. So, you know, Mr. Collinson and everybody that is with him is living here. Now we're getting into almost like Gilded Age, you know, upstairs, downstairs kind of a thing, where you have the people that wait on the people that are running the show. So here's your electrical cabinet here. And again, this stuff has been retroed, but this is pretty neat because you see some names that you'll see. Carbon pile regulator. There's your carbon pile regulator there. And this is just, I love looking at this stuff. I think this is absolutely fascinating. I should probably turn a light on so you can see it too. But yeah, this stuff is fascinating to me. And everything is labeled. You know, you got a relay, carbon pile regulator, your motor controller up here. So let's keep moving though. And remember I talked about when you press that button for the porter. Well, that is what this guy, so this would ring the bell, and then it would have a little thing that would ring up here, and that way the porter could come up and say, oh, okay, so-and-so in room A needs me. So I go to room A. And obviously each one of these would have had a label, and then would have shown, or would have had a little thing that, you know, is saying, hey, I need you here. All right, so we've left the electrical cabinet. This is the little hallway. That is the A end. That's the door that takes you into the vestibule. But let's go into the kitchen itself. And this is going to be a two-part deal here. So let's talk about the kitchen first. And you really have a lot of, for something as compact as a railroad car, you do get a lot of storage out of this. Now, something that absolutely fascinates me is trying to understand how chefs and cooks could do things like, you know, mixing up stuff, you know, whisking eggs or carving a turkey at, you know, 80, 90 miles an hour going down the rail. That is just blows my mind. So we have an all stainless steel tops here. And over on the other side is a coal stove. I believe it's a coal stove. It may have been converted to gas. I don't know off the top of my head, but it sure looks like it. Tell you what, why don't we walk over there and get you a better look. But yeah, this looks to be a coal stove. I can't swear to it, but it also has this coming into it as well. So this may have been for, oh, this is overhead tank drain. Okay, so there's some kind of tank above us, then that's where that drains out. So I am willing to put it out on the line and say this is most likely a coal stove. But again, it could have been converted. Don't know. But this is your kitchen area, and you got to think. I mean, I'm in the middle of this, and this is maybe 2 feet wide. It's probably a little bit less than that. I'd say 20 inches, but this is narrow. I mean, you really don't get a whole lot of room to move around in here. But you had storage all the way above you, and all of this, and this is pretty neat. Wash your hands, people. That's what this says. As serious diseases are spread by unclean hands of those who select, prepare, or serve foods. The Employees of the department so engaged will strictly observe the following rules. Essentially it says, wash your hands. All right, so let's keep moving here. Now you have a little pull-out seat here. That's kind of neat. A little pull-out seat. And something else is they had, so if you're going down your railroad at 80, 90 miles an hour, and you're probably doing one of these numbers. You might be doing like this if you're, well, especially if your track crew hasn't tamped in a while, but you need to be able to hold on, and that's what these are here. You know, you can hold on to this as you're going along. So let's go back into this section of the kitchen, and we'll turn here. So this, as the sign indicates, is the porter's section. And again, you would have had a porter and a chef in here, and you have accommodations for both. So this would have folded down just like a Pullman configuration to a bed. So not sure, you know, the chef would have probably slept here, the porter up above, and so they have this pulled down. This was just the typical configuration. Let me get my light on here for you. Yeah, typical Pullman pull down bed here. You have the chain that runs down, and then that just pulls up like so, and then sits, obviously goes flush with the wall. But this is where you go and rest at the end of your day of waiting on whomever it is. And then you have your toilet for the chef and the porter in here. And this is hard to see because the glare, but you have a pull down sink here, and you got a toilet there. And the shower is kind of neat because you have to walk through the shower, which is here. So there's the nozzle for it, there's the head of it, and there's your hot and cold there. And then the floor drain is down there. And so you have to walk through that just to sit on the commode and or wash your hands. Now, I think that's pretty neat. Not exactly, you know, the Holiday Inn, but it serves its purpose. So that is really, I mean, this, if you come here to the museum, and I highly encourage that you do, come see this car for yourself. They do tours of it every now and again, but check borail.org to see when they're doing the next tour of 908. But I highly recommend that you come here and see this thing for yourself. It is a beautiful time capsule, really well done restoration. I can't say that enough. So that is just something that I would highly encourage you to do. So if you've been a fan of this channel for any length of time, or perhaps you're new here, thanks for following. This is a segment that I call Cite Your Sources. So where's that come from? Well, as a former history major, I had a professor named Dr. Robert Rook who used to always say to me, well, Trevor, that's great, but cite your sources. Okay, well, here we go. For every episode, we go through and I'll give you book recommendations and tell you how I came across the information that I used to make said episode. For this particular one about 908, I found that the borail.org, or the B&O Railroad Museum's archive section, had a really good write-up about it. And I will link that below. That's the object record. Like I said, I'll link that in the description below. This was a really helpful guide, as well as using the placards that you see on the tour. You take all those, those two bits of information, you put them all together, and you got the history of the 908. If you want to learn more about these cars, the business, office, private cars, and you really want to see something outside of the B&O, I highly recommend Mansions on Rails by Lucius Beebe. And if you're a fan of rails for any length of time, or you're a history person, Lucius Beebe is a great writer. He has his own style. Well, he did. He's dead. But he had his own style, and he was very well known in the railroad community, and very well known for the three-quarter shot. But that's different episode, different time. But if you really want to learn, he's got great photos, great write-ups, and it reads very well, even though it is a bit wordy. But I highly recommend you go out and read this. And the other one is, of course, the Bible, if you will, the American Railroad Passenger Car by John H. White. And as we mentioned in the beginning of this, John H. White was a former curator for the Smithsonian in DC, the transportation section. And this is, I would call it the Bible of the American passenger car. He is, I mean, this is a phenomenal write-up. You're looking at some 600 pages. You're probably not going to read it in a weekend, but use it as a resource, and I certainly did. He has great write-ups in here about business, office, private cars, and he really goes through the history of it. And again, he's the one that points out about how these cars essentially came into existence in the 1840s and the 1850s. So get out there and read these, find these books, read them as well, but find them however it is that you find them. I'm not here to promote wherever it is you buy your books, but please, buy your books. Don't steal them. And if you get them from a library, return them. Well, I have to tell you, I truly enjoyed making this video for you. 908 is a phenomenal car, and I really do find that you have so much to learn when you walk into this thing. There is so much to digest. Thanks first and foremost to the facilities director here at the B&O Railroad Museum, Steve Johnson, for coming out on this day, and he was here for other reasons, but for turning on the heat in this thing, because at 40-something degrees outside, this car was rather cold when I came into it. So thanks to Steve for turning on that heat, and it is now toasty in this place. But this car has a lot of history to it and a great story to tell. And you should get out there and just read about this stuff. And more importantly, go to railroad museums. Find these things. They are symbols of a bygone era. Once, as we said, the automobiles, hotels, motels, private jets, et cetera, came into prominence. These really fell out of favor and became kind of symbols of excess, if you will. And so you can now see these on display at places. I highly recommend you go and do that. So this is Trevor from History on the Move. Get out there, read history, explore history, and most importantly, make your own history. I'll see you on the next one.